Flying feels routine now. You check in, pass security, board the plane, sit down, wait. Everything feels controlled, predictable, safe. But here's what most passengers never realize. What you see on a plane is only a small part of what's actually happening. Behind the calm announcements, behind the trained smiles, there's a system designed to keep you relaxed, not fully informed. Because if airlines told you everything, some people wouldn't fly the same way again. These aren't theories. These are real procedures, real rules, and real decisions happening on flights every single day. And it starts with something you've seen many times, but never questioned. Number 1, why cabin lights suddenly dim. You've seen it before. The plane starts moving, the lights dim, especially at night. Most people think it's for comfort. It's not. It's preparation. Because takeoff and landing are the most critical moments of any flight. If something goes wrong, passengers may need to evacuate instantly. And in that moment, your eyes matter. By dimming the cabin lights, the crew is helping your vision adjust to the outside darkness ahead of time. So, if the cabin suddenly loses power or fills with smoke, you're not blinded. You can see where to go. You can move faster. You can get out. It's a quiet safety step, one that could save lives, and most people never even notice it happening. Number 2, planes can legally fly with broken parts. Here's something that makes a lot of passengers uncomfortable. Planes are not always 100% fully functional when they take off. And yes, that's allowed. Every aircraft operates under something called the Minimum Equipment List, MEL. This system defines which parts must work and which ones can fail without grounding the plane. So, what can be broken? Reading lights, entertainment screens, coffee machines, other non-essential systems. If it's not critical to flight safety, the plane can still depart. To passengers, it sounds risky. To pilots and engineers, it's normal, because the aircraft is only stopped if essential systems are affected. Everything else is managed, monitored, and accepted. So, next time something near your seat isn't working, it's not an oversight, it's an approved decision. Good. Now it starts getting more interesting and a bit more uncomfortable. Number 3. Hidden crew sleeping areas you never see. Long flight, 10 hours, maybe 12. You're stuck in your seat trying to sleep in a position your body clearly hates, waking up every hour. But the crew, they don't look exhausted the same way you do. That's because at some point during the flight, they disappear. On aircraft like the Boeing 777 and Boeing 787, there are hidden crew rest compartments built into the plane. No signs, no announcements. Sometimes above the cabin, sometimes below. Access through doors that look like storage panels or hidden entry points most passengers walk right past without noticing. Inside are small sleeping pods, tight, quiet, and completely out of sight. While you're trying to get comfortable in economy, a flight attendant or even a pilot could be asleep just a few feet away. And here's what most people don't realize. This isn't optional, it's required. Because fatigue at cruising altitude isn't just uncomfortable, it's a safety risk. So, while you're awake watching the flight map, part of the crew has already stepped into a hidden part of the aircraft you didn't even know existed. Number 4. The oxygen mask reality most people miss. You've heard it during every safety briefing. Put your mask on before helping others. Simple, easy to ignore. But here's the part they don't emphasize enough. Those oxygen masks only last about 12 to 15 minutes. That's it. At first that sounds terrifying, but the mask isn't designed to keep you comfortable. It's designed to keep you conscious just long enough. If cabin pressure drops, pilots immediately descend the aircraft to a safer altitude, usually below 1,000 feet, where you can breathe normally again. That descent only takes minutes. The mask is just buying time. But here's the real danger. You don't have minutes to react. You have seconds. Because when oxygen levels drop, hypoxia doesn't feel dramatic. You won't panic. You won't struggle. You'll just become confused, slower, unfocused, and then you pass out quietly. That's why the real rule isn't just to use the mask, it's to use it immediately. No hesitation, no helping others first. Because if you wait, you might not even realize you needed it. Now we move into the part most passengers never question, but probably should. Number 5. The water you drink might not be what you think. You're thirsty mid-flight. You press the call button or wait for the cart. You order coffee, tea, maybe just water. Feels harmless. But here's something many flight attendants quietly avoid themselves. Tap water on planes isn't always as clean as you think. That includes coffee and tea, because they're made using onboard water tanks. And those tanks, they're not cleaned nearly as often as most passengers would expect. Multiple inspections and studies over the years have found bacteria inside aircraft water systems, including things like E. coli. Now, technically, the water meets minimum safety standards, but technically safe and something you want to drink at 35,000 feet are two very different things. That's why many crew members stick to sealed bottled water instead, because once you know what's inside of those tanks, it's hard to ignore. Number 6. Yes, pilots can sleep during your flight. This one surprises almost everyone. At some point during your flight, your pilot might be asleep. Not both at the same time, but yes, it happens. It's called controlled rest. On long-haul flights, pilots take turns resting while the aircraft is on autopilot. One stays fully alert monitoring systems and communication. The other steps away to sleep. On even longer flights, there may be relief pilots rotating in shifts. Because flying for 10 to 14 hours straight across time zones isn't just tiring, it's dangerous if fatigue sets in. So airlines don't fight it, they manage it. A rested pilot is a safer pilot. Still, it feels different when you realize that at some point mid-flight, the person in control of the aircraft may not be awake, and that's not a mistake, it's part of the system. Now we're getting into the details passengers experience every flight, but almost never question. Number 7. Airplane mode isn't about crashing the plane. You've heard it hundreds of times. Please switch your phone to airplane mode, and let's be honest, a lot of people ignore it. Because deep down, everyone's thinking the same thing. My phone isn't going to crash a plane, and they're right. One phone won't bring down an aircraft. That's not the real issue. The problem is interference. When hundreds of phones are all trying to connect to ground towers at the same time, especially during takeoff and landing, they can create signal noise. Not enough to cause danger, but enough to interfere with pilot communication. Think static, disruptions, annoying audio interference at the worst possible moment. So, airplane mode isn't about preventing disasters. It's about keeping communication clean when it matters most. It's a small rule, but one that keeps the system running smoothly. Number 8. That private bathroom isn't fully private. At some point during the flight, you step into the lavatory, lock the door. Finally, a bit of privacy. Or at least, that's what it feels like. Because here's the truth. Every airplane bathroom door can be unlocked from the outside. There's a hidden latch, usually behind the lavatory sign, that allows crew members to open the door anytime if needed. Why? Emergencies. If a passenger collapses, becomes unresponsive, or stays inside too long, the crew needs access immediately. So yes, the lock works, but it's not absolute. Privacy on a plane isn't a guarantee, it's more like a temporary illusion. Now we move into the part where you realize you've been observed this whole time. Number 9. You're being quietly assessed when you board. You walk onto the plane. A flight attendant smiles. Hello, welcome aboard. It feels polite, routine. But that moment, it's not just a greeting, it's an assessment. Every single passenger is being quickly scanned as they board, and it happens fast, seconds at most. They're looking for signs of intoxication, unusual behavior, visible illness, anything that could become a problem once the doors close. Because once you're in the air, options are limited. But there's another layer most people never realize. They're also identifying potential helpers, passengers who look physically capable, alert, and calm. People who could assist in an emergency if needed. So, while you're thinking about your seat number, they're already making a judgment call about you. Quietly. Number 10. Some seats are statistically safer than others. Everyone has a preferred seat. Front for convenience, window for the view, aisle for space. But here's something rarely talked about. Not all seats are equal when it comes to survival. Data from past accidents has shown that passengers seated toward the rear of the aircraft have slightly higher survival rates. Why? In several crashes, the tail section remained more intact than the front. It's not a guarantee. Every accident is different. But statistically, the back of the plane has had an edge. And there's another detail most people overlook. Aisle seats, while more comfortable, are more exposed. Carts bump into you, passengers pass constantly, and during turbulence, you're more vulnerable to impact. So the best seat? It depends on what you value. Comfort or odds? Now we're getting into the parts that sound scary, but are actually more controlled than you think. Number 11. Planes get struck by lightning more often than you think. Lightning hitting a plane sounds like a nightmare. Blinding flash, loud crack, total panic. But here's the reality most passengers never hear. It happens more often than you think. Commercial aircraft are struck by lightning roughly once a year on average, and yet you almost never hear about it. Why? Because planes are built for it. Modern aircraft are designed with conductive outer layers that allow the electrical current to pass through the body of the plane and exit safely without affecting critical systems. So, if lightning strikes, you might see a flash outside the window. You might hear a dull thud. But most of the time, passengers don't even realize it happened. What feels like a disaster is actually something engineers have already planned music for. Number 12. The air you breathe isn't fully fresh. You settle into your seat. The air feels clean, controlled. But here's the truth. You're not breathing 100% fresh air. Inside the cabin, the air is a mix of outside air and recirculated air from within the plane. Now here's the reassuring part, and the part most people don't know. That recycled air goes through HEPA filters, which remove about 99.97% of bacteria and airborne particles. So it's not dirty air, but it's shared air, and on a full flight, that matters. Music. Especially during flu season or when someone nearby isn't feeling well. Because while the system is highly effective, you still don't know who sat in your seat before you or who's breathing next to you now. We've reached the part most people never think about, but probably should. Number 13. The dirtiest surface on the plane isn't the bathroom. You open your tray table, place your food, your phone, maybe even rest your head on it. Feels harmless. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That tray table might be one of the dirtiest places on the entire aircraft. Studies have found bacteria levels on tray tables that can rival, and sometimes exceed, those found in airplane lavatories. Why? Because they're not cleaned as often as you think. Turnaround time between flights is short, cleaning is quick, and tray tables are used for everything. Eating, working, and sometimes things far worse. Passengers change diapers on them, spill drinks, touch them constantly. And then the next person sits down and uses it without thinking twice. So if you're planning to eat directly off that surface, you might want to think again. Number 14. Overbooked flights are not a mistake. You've probably heard this before. Sorry, the flight is overbooked. It sounds like an accident, a scheduling error, bad luck. It's not. Overbooking is intentional. Airlines know that a certain percentage of passengers won't show up, so they sell more tickets than there are seats every single day. Most of the time it works, but when everyone shows up, that's when things get uncomfortable. Passengers get offered vouchers, incentives, deals to give up their seat, and if no one volunteers, someone gets bumped. It's a calculated risk designed to maximize profit. Unfortunately, it can also destroy someone's travel plans in seconds. Number 15. What really happens if someone dies mid-flight? This is rare, but it happens. And when it does, there's no dramatic announcement, no panic. Everything is handled quietly, respectfully. If a passenger passes away during a flight, the crew will usually move the body to an empty row, if space allows, and cover it with a blanket. On some long-haul aircraft, there are special kits on board prepared for this exact situation. But there's no dedicated space, no refrigeration. In many cases, the body remains in the cabin until landing, just a few rows away from other passengers. Unnoticed or quietly understood. It's one of the most serious situations a crew can face. Handled with professionalism, but also with limits. Because at 35,000 feet, there are things you simply cannot change. Flying feels simple on the surface, but underneath, it's a system built on hidden rules, calculated risks, and quiet decisions happening every second. From dimmed lights and limited oxygen to overbooked flights and recycled air, you're part of a system designed to keep everything moving smoothly, efficiently, and often without questions. Now you see it differently. And once you notice these things, it's hard to unsee them. If this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe for more insider travel truths, and tell me in the comments which of these surprised you the most. Because the more you know, the harder it is to be caught off guard.